Hello, welcome to another episode of Global Pause Rethink the Future. So today's podcast, we're going to be looking at the movement of minimalism that has been popularized over the last few years. It's a response, obviously, to our consumerist culture. So what I thought would be a good idea is to look at the aspirations for minimalism and to see whether or not it can possibly live up to the lofty ideals. And so it's probably something that we can question, but like anything, it's probably pointing in the right direction, but because maybe it doesn't address the underlying issues, which I kind of tend to kind of go over at length, it's beholden to certain kind of presuppositions. And so it limits really the scope of change just to a lifestyle. So if you think our way of life, if we're securing our time as a supplement in order to style it, you might be resolving upon the way how you can differentiate yourself through your consumption. And so therefore you can substantiate consumption as a way of showing difference as a lifestyle, just as much as that you can secure your time as a supplement, still resolve upon removing want from your life, and so therefore have more purpose in your life. But the issue here is that you might be removing what is secondary as far as our relationality goes, which is the want. But if you've secured your time as a supplement to begin with, then you're securing it against the they, as it were, the relationality that we all share being market orientated. And so therefore it very much becomes a niche. So the issue here is that because it's a lifestyle, it doesn't presuppose any potential beyond it being a lifestyle. So this is really where I'm going to be focusing on it, because it looks at, it's a response to consumerism. But like I said, that it's points, but does it go far enough? And there's potential within it. But if there's potential within it, then it has nothing to do with people's individual lives. Because the funny thing about it is that we all share the malaise of our modern way of life. We all share it. But then how do we go about achieving the end for ourselves? We individualize solutions. And this is ultimately half the problem. We don't realize that it's a collective disease. So if it's a collective disease, then orientating towards approaching this from an individualized, a person's life, about having more meaning in your life, how does that address a collective disease? And if it's a collective disease, then it has to be addressed collectively. So if it doesn't potentialize anything beyond lifestyle, then essentially what it's going to do, it's going to be beholden to the things that it doesn't kind of really interrogate. And that's really what I'm going to be looking at. That's my big, long preamble as per usual. So what is it? The one thing which I thought would be a good thing is to look at what does it hope to achieve? So it's, like I said, it's a response to consumerism. So it's about, there's a certain things that it aspire to. So I'm taking this actually from the minimalists. So the two blokes that were the ones that kind of have written the book and done all the kind of movies and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking at it really from just taking it straight from their website. So it's got about help, eliminating discontent, reclaiming our time, living in the moment, pursuing our passions, discovering our missions, experience real freedom, create more, consume less, focus on health, grow as individuals, contribute beyond ourselves. Okay, key point, rid ourselves of excess stuff. So it's kind of like decluttering, and discover purpose within our lives. So all these things are very aspirational. So let's look at some of them and see whether or not they're beholden to something they don't question. So the main one is, all right, so eliminate discontent. So we all know about just market dynamics or consumerism is just, it impoverishes what it means to be. Ultimately, if you are a consumer, you're passive, you're only considered as good as your wants, you're constantly being bombarded prior to you even being born through the tactics or the strategic directive of being market orientated, to, as I always say, to disinhibit yourself towards the pursuit of life through being market orientated. And so that's just always about what is preeminent in our life is want. But as I always keep on saying, and this relates to reclaim our time. So why are we moderns now where we consider ourselves to be time poor? And so I always say that the issue here, when people think of that you're time poor, and that these guys say that you need to reclaim your time, all right, for moments within life that are precious. but how is your time given to you? This is the thing that is never, ever questioned. Okay, because if we reify our time and we make it precious, it's no less a commodity for us saying that it's precious. But the more that you account for your time as being precious, the less that you, in actual fact, that you have of it, in the sense that you're beholden to a way of life that substantiates the way time is given to you. So if in the context of, say, what minimalism is orientated towards, if it's lifestyle, you're not giving due consideration to the relationality or the convention of your time being an economic good, and the way that obviously facilitates consumerism as a way of sharing. So if you're looking at that reclaiming your time, you're reclaiming the supplement of time that you're always orientated towards anyway. That's the preeminent good that you're focused on. That's what underwrites your wants. So when they're looking at the way how you're reclaiming your time, all you're doing is you're looking at your own individual timeline, all right, in the sense of your labour and your leisure. And so therefore maybe looking at the way how the marginality that runs through your life, if you've got a job and you've got this pressure on you into such a degree where you're selling yourself out, as it were, and so therefore you give yourself towards your job in a way that you should be allowing yourself to actually experience the joy of life, to ultimately what you love to do, with sharing it with friends and family or whatnot. The issue here is it's still secured as a supplement. So when you're looking at reclaiming your time, and that's just essentially about the deprivation or the lack of time that we have for ourselves, that's indicating that the time that they're talking about is an economic good. Right, they haven't problematized the issue of time being an economic good and the marginality that runs through our lives. And this is the reason why minimalism as a movement, and this is what I say, it's not only minimalism, it's sustainability. It relates to even cause marketing, is obviously social justice, the way how social justice gets kind of touted. All these things, if they don't question the way how our time is given to us, and it's an absolute claim, then anything that they presuppose as being orientated towards maybe individual lives, that's fine. But that presupposes is, like I said, is that it's looking at it from a lifestyle perspective. So if you're saying pursuing your passions, you're pursuing your passions what? As a pastime? All right, if it's a pastime, you've secured your time in order for you to pursue your passions as a pastime. What does it mean to be a pastime? Well, you've secured your time prior. Right, you have to secure it. You have to secure it as a supplement in order for there to be a pastime or to have leisure. It presupposes the way that we're orientated towards securing our time is always done prior to the act, to our passion. So that the whole linear understanding of the way how we're securing is something because we're securing it against. This is the whole issue with it. There's nothing that's dynamic that's in play when you presuppose a passion that's contingent. It depends whether or not it's in the mean of your existence. So they haven't qualified at that. So discover your missions is very similar to your passions. Experience real freedom. So my thing is that you could take this to mean just freedom from want. So if you're looking at the being market orientated and you're just constantly, like I said, being bombarded through the propaganda of our way of life, did this inhibit your receptivity towards that way, the way how that wants can be engendered in order for you to chase want, as it were, is a way obviously to have distance. And so therefore the freedom that you get from that allows, pursuing your passions. There's no doubt about it. And so in that regard, you can say that you do have a sense of freedom because it's a freedom from, it's not a freedom to, because, we have to think that being market orientated and our whole way of life and our communications is beholden to the way that we're always addressed as a consumer. And you very much can never kind of remove yourself from that, especially when that's just the current paradigm. To disengage from that is to remove yourself from the maelstrom of your wants or desires that are constantly can be solicited as such. So here is the issue. So there is an element of freedom that comes with it. There's all the thing about it is there's all potential. There's all this latency that exists there because the thing about it is that if people are orientated towards like reducing of kind of editing or culling a lot of the extraneous things out of their lives, ultimately what the issue here is that they've got a certain way of looking at life that they realize that there's a problem. And so therefore the constant kind of solicitation of your want or the demand that's placed upon people to essentially subscribe to a certain kind of way of life is what they're now holding off at arm's length. So this indicates that people are questioning. It's a response to consumerism, like I said. So it gives you an indication that there's a lot of potential there. Create more, consume less. Well, we could say that this relates to following your passions, as it were. Focusing on your health is probably more of a mental health issue more than anything if you're looking at it from a discontent. Because what would be the issue here? Well, it's the acquisitive mimesis. If our whole way of life is always based upon comparing ourselves to others, and how do you compare yourselves? What's that got to do with it when you're looking at discontent or you're looking at your mental health? You've got to think of the relationality that is substantiated when you're beholden to an unavowed utopianism, which these guys obviously are not really aware of, because you marginalise the world for the sake of your wants, and so therefore you impoverish the world. It's been marginalised, and so the way how you overcome that poverty is by sharing through your consumption. But then that means to say the good of visibility is set off against the opaque nature of our publicness. And so the way how people are orientated towards other people is through visibility. And so that's the way you can compare yourself to what the forms of life that are given as the models, as it were. So to disengage from that means to say there's a lot more space within your mind as such, because you are no longer, you have maybe more integrity as a person, and you're not pursuing the signs of life, and you're more orientated towards your heart, which relates to your passions as such. Grow as individuals. So growing as individuals from that perspective would be, well, if you're not beholden to comparing yourself constantly and the acquisitive mimesis of the way how it ratchets up, especially if it depends within the certain social milieu, as it were, like that you are beholden to, well, it means to say that you're not beholden to the game, as it were. And so you inhibit the game, and so you become more integral as a person because you're really looking at what drives you and not necessarily being beholden to a cultural dynamic that can be vacuous as such. So to grow as a person is really looking at the way you grow into yourself because you're not being pulled outside yourself. So a derivative form of ecstasy, which is essentially what marketing and branding tends to kind of propagate. And so this is a question here, to contribute beyond ourselves. So how do you do that? How do you do that without it not being supplementary to the preeminent good of time that you are securing for yourself? So this is one thing that this would not be addressed with the minimalism, because any sense of community, if it's beholden to the preeminent good of your time, the way how you secure your time as a supplement, it means to say that your time is the preeminent good. So it's what you value the most. So anything that you do is always really derivative or subordinate to that preeminence. There's no way that you can get around it because there's an absolute claim that works on your time when you presuppose it as an economic good. And this is why I always say that you have to potentialize your time beyond the economic good to temporalize place for a common surpassing. Temporalizing place for a common surpassing is really the way how you contribute beyond ourselves or beyond yourself. So to contribute beyond yourself is to see beyond the value of your own time. So the legacy of your actions in that regard. So if you're looking at it from the aspect of create more, which they talk about, well, create more, what would the creation here mean? Now, creating more, if it's relating to your passions, then it's a pastime. But if you're looking at the giving and the receiving, and that's the most creative portent for potentializing life, the way how we give and the way how we receive, then if you're looking at to create more, well, really you're looking at the relationality to move it from want to creativity. And so that requires a specific, let's say, praxis or ethos that would make good on the aspirations that they highlight here. But if create more is only in context with like a pastime, then really there's nothing that's potentializing it beyond like the lifestyle that this thing very much is orientated towards. And this obviously relates to Well, if you're looking at ridding yourself of excess stuff, that's just if you're removing your want of the signs of life and are orientated towards expressing your true individuality, as it were, and so that relates to creativity, then obviously you're going to remove a lot of the excessive stuff that you're disengaging yourself from consumerism, and so as a result, it just kind of feeds into that. And to discover purpose in our lives. So the critical thing here, this relates really to the way how that we contribute beyond ourselves. But then it relates to creativity. I always talk about creative, sustainable wellness. So really, if as a response to consumerism, you can say this is just removing unnecessary consumption. So there's a sustainability aspect to it. If you're disengaging from consumerism as a culture, then you're looking at your mental wellness, which is critical. But then you also, if you're looking at the way how you can animate the creativity in your lives outside the circumscribed nature of the way how this would be given, as it's beholden to securing your time as a supplement, then you have the makings basically for creative, sustainable wellness. The issue this is beholden to is the nature of time. If it doesn't question time as a supplement, how we secure it, then what you're doing is that you're never going to potentialize the way how you share with other people and the way how you see beyond yourselves to potentialize a legacy of your actions beyond the supplement that you secure. Because if you presuppose a supplement, then your legacy is really just bequeathing your wealth to your children primarily. Okay, so but are you bequeathing a way of life to your children? And this is the true test of legacy. Because let's say that you do, we do this. This is what happens. This is our way of life. We don't think that the biggest legacy that we could give to our children is our way of life. We don't give ourselves credit for that. We give ourselves credit for what we've secured through our working life. And then if there's any left over, once we cark it, then they have the benefit of it. That's it. All right, why is it that we don't extend that credit to ourselves and the way how we can bequeath a way of life to our children? Now, if we did that, then a lot of the things that they talk about here is thrown into relief, because then it's relating to, what does it relate to? It relates to the relationality. And if it's relating to the relationality, and what is relationality here? This is the reason why consumerism has come about, is we have a relationality of want. We don't potentialize a relationality beyond that denominator. And as a result of that, we share in the kind of substitutable way that we kind of do through the signs of life, of what we think would constitute life if we're beholden to independence as an ideal. All right, so one of the things that you can look at is interdependence. Interdependence is critical, which relates to what they've talked about when you're looking at contributing beyond yourselves. But so this movement is heading in the right direction. But the issue, like with even the way our economics frames it, if it doesn't look at the preeminent good of your time, and it only consider we don't realize how we've individualized the pursuit of life where we secure time as a supplement, then a lot of the things that here, and you're not looking at a praxis that would see past beyond your time as an economic good, because that's going to potentialize life as a legacy that you're going to bequeath to your children as a way of life. And that's the most precious thing that we can give to our children, is to see that. Now that's it. That's the way how that you can kind of do it. So I think that I'll probably leave it at there, because I feel that as far as, like responses, the other one, I ever talked about this prior, another response is the slow movement, which is obviously a direct result. And it's very similar, obviously, to this. But just does it in a kind of different way, because, if you're looking at slow movement and that relates to the way how you make things, it becomes, it champions artisanship and then a craft and very localized ways of producing, but then it's a way how you can potentialize that beyond the commercial imperative of our way of life and to see what underwrites it. And so the issue I always have with anything in our modern way of life is that if we're not looking at time, because time is the absolute claim that we've got to break, or we've got to potentialize beyond it. And if we don't do that, then all we're going to do, you might be removing a lot of the unnecessary consumption, but then it's a lifestyle and it doesn't potentialize life beyond it. And I just feel that's what the movement of the minimalism is beholden to. But anyway, until next time, take care.